the screen. I was going to spend this morning talking about our gospel lesson today, this parable of the rich fool, and talk about how that relates to the Marie Kondo version of tidying up your house. It was going to be fun, but today is not a day that calls for fun. Much like many of you, you heard yesterday about the mass shooting in El Paso, and I went to bed kind of early last night, trying to figure out what that meant for me and what that meant for the world. And this morning was confronted by news of another mass shooting in Dayton, Ohio. So we're going to ignore Marie Kondo, even though she's very lovely this morning, and talk about those events. But before we talk about them, I'm going to invite us to take some moments of silence to remember the victims of violence throughout the world, those whose lives are taken by acts of mass shootings or by destructive forces in the world. So we're going to take some silence. And the silence is going to be kind of lengthy. And if you get uncomfortable, that's okay. But I invite you into that time of silence now. A reading from the Gospel of Matthew. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain. And after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Gilroy, California, South Haven, Mississippi, El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. This week has been bookended by mass shootings in the United States of America. So far, the death toll is 34, with many, many more wounded. According to the Associated Press, the shootings yesterday in El Paso and Dayton were the 21st and 22nd mass shootings in the United States of America this year. The country with the next most had 3 in all of last year. Now, my job isn't to stand up here and talk about politics or political issues. My job is to make sense of this all as a working theologian, as someone who continues to ask, where is God and how is God operating in this world? And I stand in front of you this morning, and I have to admit that when I hear news stories, such as the one that I woke up to this morning, I wonder where exactly God is. Because I can't make sense of it. I can't logically think through the steps. I don't understand why this keeps happening and happening and happening. And if I'm honest with myself, I have to thank God that it hasn't happened to someone whom I love yet. Statistics tell us that eventually all of us will be affected by someone who's lost their life in one of these mass shootings, whether that's a friend, a relative, a friend of a relative, or a friend of a friend or of a relative. It's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon with a much, much darker ending. Now, what do we do with this information as Christian people, as people who believe in a God who's omnipresent and omnipotent and who wants nothing for us but love and forgiveness, and who shows us abounding mercy? A God who compels us to treat the neighbor as we want to be treated. A God who commands us not to take life or bear false witness against one another. A God who at God's very essence is filled with love. As we think about this, as people who are labeled as children of God, we ask ourselves, where is God and what is God up to? And sometimes we come up with nothing. We fail to see how God is operating in this broken and dark world. And when we come up with that nothing, we have to recognize that maybe that nothingness isn't God. Maybe it's the nothingness of God's people responding to God's call to be active in the world. If you were here last week, you heard me talk about prayer. And that prayer is a call to action. That when we pray to God, we open ourselves up to the possibility that God uses us as an answer to our own prayers. question to you this morning, brothers and sisters in Christ, is that when you pray for an end of gun violence, how are you bringing an end to gun violence here in this world? When you pray for the end of hateful rhetoric that compels people to act out in not so positive ways, how are you helping to bring an end to that rhetoric? When you hear about white nationalism and xenophobia happening and racism and sexism and homophobia, when you pray, how are you opening yourself up to the fact that God is asking you and using you to combat all those forces in the world? These are big, heavy questions. And people much smarter and much wiser than I have tried to figure out what our response is things like this as Christian people. And not only people who have written tomes and tomes of theological writings or books a long time ago, but this is a current reality. Did you know that the ELCA, the denomination that we're a part of, addressed this issue in 1995 in a social statement called Peace. In 1995, when gun violence isn't at the level it is here and now. And the social statements of our church talk about and try to make sense of the theological reality in which we reside. And then these social statements talk about how we as Christian people who identify ourselves as Lutherans are called to respond. And our social statement of 1995 calls us to do a number of things. And I'm just going to lift those up for us this morning. More than anything else, our social statement calls us, and God calls us, to develop a culture of peace. And we do this by fostering a dynamic vision of difference in unity. When all the isms of the world happen, it's people looking at the differences that we share or that we have in between us as created children of God. And those people decide that those differences are the things that belittle someone else's humanness, that belittles the imago Dei in them. Therefore, they can treat them as something that is subhuman, something that is sub-divine. The social statement calls us to recognize and celebrate the imago Dei in brothers and sisters who look different than we do, and behave different than we do, and who worship different than we do, and who love differently than we do, and recognize them as a sacred individual who is called a child of God, and to love them as we ourselves would want to be loved. The social statement calls us to promote human rights. This is also a recognition that just as we are created in the image of God, so are all of God's people. And all of God's people should be treated with dignity and respect. Our social statement calls us to counter and transform attitudes that encourage violence. To speak out and to proclaim, to say that we've had enough. This isn't the intended version of God's creation. And this isn't the version of God's creation that I want to abide with. And I'm going to speak out about that and tell the world that it can be different, that it can be transformed, that it can be pushed towards wholeness again through love instead of hatred and violence. Finally, our social statement calls us to strengthen the will and ability to resolve conflicts peacefully. And the way to resolve a conflict peacefully is to engage in relationship with the other. To recognize the dignity of the other. To recognize the humanness of the other. To come to the conversation with love for the other. Now, do these things sound impossible? Absolutely. But nothing is impossible with God. God calls us to a higher ideal. God calls us to a better way of life and a better way of living. God calls us to say enough is enough. No more innocent lives need to be taken. It's ridiculous. So, brothers and sisters in Christ, I wish so this morning that I could talk about Marie Kondo and tidying up your hearts. But I can't. Because my heart is wrapped in darkness. But the good news is that in that darkness, there is light. The light of Christ dwells within me and within you, and it's just bursting to be let out into the world to say things can be different. My prayer for you and my prayer for myself is that I can let that light shine. That as I mourn with brothers and sisters in Christ and love children of God throughout the world, that God can use me to help bring an end to this senseless violence in the world. And my prayer is that God uses you